She laughed at the woman on the phone, called her weak, pathetic, a ghost from his past. But then she saw the picture. 2 children, 5 years old, his eyes, the same dark, piercing gaze that made her fall in love. Her fiancé had sons, and the woman she mocked, their mother. Now she has 48 hours before the wedding, and a choice that will destroy everything she thought she knew about love. Minji stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, the city glittering below like scattered diamonds. Her reflection stared back at her, flawless makeup, designer silk robe, diamond engagement ring catching the light. 26 years old, about to marry the most powerful man in the Korean underground. She smiled. Everything was perfect. Her phone buzzed on the marble counter. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something, curiosity, boredom, arrogance, made her answer. Hello? Silence. Then a woman's voice. Soft, tired, careful. Is this Minji? Who's asking? Minji's tone sharpened instantly. I need to speak with Jae-sung. Minji's smile turned cold. Jae-sung, her fiancé, the man whose name made entire neighborhoods bow. He's busy, Minji said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. You can talk to me. I'm his fiancé. A pause. Too long. I didn't know he was engaged. Minji laughed. Sharp. Cruel. Of course you didn't. Let me guess. You're one of those women from his past, still holding on to something that never existed? The woman on the other end didn't respond immediately. When she did, her voice was steady. Almost too steady. I'm not holding on to anything, I just needed to tell him something. Then tell me, Minji said, walking toward the balcony, the wind catching her hair. I'll decide if it's worth his time. Another silence. It's about his sons. Minji froze. The word echoed in her mind like a gunshot. Sons. What sons? Her voice was ice now, the woman hesitated. I didn't mean to… What? Sons. I shouldn't have called. I'm sorry. The line went dead. Minji stood there, the phone still pressed to her ear, her heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with love. Jae-sung didn't come home until after midnight. He moved like a shadow through the penthouse, his presence heavy and silent, dark suit, cold eyes. The kind of man who commanded empires without raising his voice. Minji watched him from the couch, her legs tucked beneath her, wine glass in hand. Busy night? She asked, her tone casual. Always. He poured himself a drink, didn't look at her. I got a call today. That made him pause, just for a second, but she saw it. From who? A woman? His jaw tightened, barely. But Minji had learned to read him, every muscle, every breath. What did she want? She said something about your sons. The silence that followed was suffocating. Jae-sung turned slowly, his dark eyes locking onto hers. And for the first time since they'd met, Minji felt something she'd never felt around him. Fear. What did you say to her? His voice was calm, too calm. I didn't say anything. She hung up. He stared at her for a long moment, then he downed his drink in one motion and walked toward the bedroom. Jae-sung. He stopped, didn't turn around. Do you have sons? Go to bed, Minji. Answer me. He looked back at her then, and the coldness in his eyes made her breath catch. Some things are better left alone. Then he was gone. Minji couldn't sleep. She lay in the massive bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation in her mind. Sons. Plural. Not a mistake. Not a lie. Her phone glowed on the nightstand. She grabbed it, scrolled through the call log, found the unknown number. She hesitated. Then she typed a message. Who are you? The response came faster than she expected. Someone who made the mistake of loving him. Minji's chest tightened. And the boys? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then a photo loaded. Minji's breath stopped. 2 boys. Identical. Maybe 5 years old. Dark hair, bright smiles, and eyes. Those eyes. The same dark, piercing gaze that had made her fall in love with Jae-sung the first time she saw him. Her hands shook. She zoomed in on the photo. Their faces, their expressions, the way they stood, shoulders back, chins up. Miniature versions of the man sleeping in the next room. Another message appeared. I didn't call to ruin your life. I called because they're sick. Both of them. And I can't do this alone anymore. Minji stared at the screen. Her perfect world, the engagement, the wedding, the empire she was about to inherit, suddenly felt like it was built on sand, and the tide was coming in. Artifact 1. Introdução obrigatoria, primeros 40 seconds. She laughed at the woman on the phone, called her weak, pathetic, a ghost from his past. But then she saw the picture. 2 children. 5 years old. His eyes. The same dark, piercing gaze that made her fall in love. Her fiancé had sons. And the woman she mocked? Their mother. Now, she has 48 hours before the wedding. and a choice that will destroy everything she thought she knew about love. Emotional summary. A bride-to-be mocks the ex-girlfriend of her powerful fiancé during a cruel phone call until she sees a photograph that shatters her world. Twin boys with her lover's unmistakable eyes. The woman she humiliated has been raising his hidden sons alone for 5 years. Now, torn between the empire she's about to enter and the devastating truth, she must decide whether to confront the man she loves or bury the secret that could destroy them all. But silence has a price. And in the world of the Korean mafia, secrets don't stay buried, they explode. A story of arrogance, redemption, and the impossible weight of truth. Chapter 01. The Impossible Encounter. 8,000 characters. Minji stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, the city glittering below like scattered diamonds. Her reflection stared back at her. Flawless makeup, designer silk robe, diamond engagement ring catching the light, 26 years old, about to marry the most powerful man in the Korean underground. She smiled. Everything was perfect. Her phone buzzed on the marble counter. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something, curiosity, boredom, arrogance, made her answer. Hello? Silence. Then a woman's voice. Soft, tired, careful. Is this Minji? Who's asking? Minji's tone sharpened instantly. I need to speak with Jae-sung. Minji's smile turned cold. Jae-sung, her fiancé. The man whose name made entire neighborhoods bow. He's busy, Minji said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. You can talk to me. I'm his fiancé. A pause. Too long. I didn't know he was engaged. Minji laughed. Sharp, cruel. Of course you didn't. Let me guess. You're one of those women from his past? Still holding on to something that never existed? The woman on the other end didn't respond immediately. When she did, her voice was steady. Almost too steady. I'm not holding on to anything. I just needed to tell him something. Then tell me, Minji said, walking toward the balcony, the wind catching her hair. I'll decide if it's worth his time. Another silence. It's about his sons. Minji froze. The word echoed in her mind like a gunshot. Sons. What sons? Her voice was ice now. The woman hesitated. I didn't mean to… What? Sons? I shouldn't have called. I'm sorry. The line went dead. Minji stood there, the phone still pressed to her ear, her heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with love. Jae-sung didn't come home until after midnight. He moved like a shadow through the penthouse, his presence heavy and silent. Dark suit, cold eyes, the kind of man who commanded empires without raising his voice. Minji watched him from the couch, her legs tucked beneath her, wine glass in hand. Busy night? She asked, her tone casual. Always. He poured himself a drink, didn't look at her. I got a call today. That made him pause, just for a second, but she saw it. From who? A woman. His jaw tightened. Barely. But Minji had learned to read him. Every muscle. Every breath. What did she want? She said something about your sons. The silence that followed was suffocating. Jae-sung turned slowly, his dark eyes locking onto hers. And for the first time since they'd met, Minji felt something she'd never felt around him. Fear. What did you say to her? His voice was calm. Too calm. I didn't say anything. She hung up. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he downed his drink in one motion and walked toward the bedroom. Jae-sung. He stopped. Didn't turn around. Do you have sons? Go to bed, Minji. Answer me. He looked back at her then, and the coldness in his eyes made her breath catch. Some things are better left alone. Then he was gone. Minji couldn't sleep. She lay in the massive bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation in her mind. Sons. Plural. Not a mistake. Not a lie. Her phone glowed on the nightstand. She grabbed it, scrolled through the call log, found the unknown number. She hesitated. Then she typed a message. Who are you? The response came faster than she expected. Someone who made the mistake of loving him. Minji's chest tightened. And the boys? 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then a photo loaded. Minji's breath stopped. 2 boys, identical, maybe 5 years old, dark hair, bright smiles, and eyes. Those eyes. The same dark, piercing gaze that had made her fall in love with Jae-sung the first time she saw him. Her hands shook. She zoomed in on the photo. Their faces, their expressions, the way they stood, shoulders back, chins up. Miniature versions of the man sleeping in the next room. Another message appeared. I didn't call to ruin your life. I called because they're sick. Both of them. And I can't do this alone anymore. Minji stared at the screen. Her perfect world, the engagement, the wedding, the empire she was about to inherit, suddenly felt like it was built on sand, and the tide was coming in. Chapter 02. Worlds collide 8,000 characters. Morning light filtered through the curtains, cold and gray. Minji hadn't moved from the bed. The photo still glowed on her phone screen. 2 boys. His boys. She heard Jae-sung in the shower, the sound of water. Normal. Routine. But nothing was normal anymore. When he emerged, dressed in a black suit that fit like armor, he glanced at her. No warmth, no question. "I have meetings all day," he said, adjusting his cufflinks. "The wedding planner will call you. I need to talk to you. Later." Jae-sung. He stopped at the door. Didn't turn. "Do you have children?" His shoulders tensed. "Just slightly. I told you, some things—" "I saw the picture." Silence. He turned slowly, his expression unreadable. "What picture?" Minji held up her phone. For a moment, something flickered across his face. Something she'd never seen before. Pain. Then it was gone. "Where did you get that?" "She sent it to me. The woman who called." Jae-sung's jaw clenched. His hands curled into fists at his sides. "Her name," Minji said quietly, "is Hana. Isn't it?" He didn't answer. "And those boys. They're 5 years old, which means—" Her voice cracked. "Which means you were with her when you met me. It's not that simple." "Then make it simple." Her voice was rising now, anger bleeding through the shock. "Tell me the truth. Are they yours?" Jae-sung walked to the window, his back to her. "Yes." The word hit her like a bullet. "Yes?" She repeated, her voice hollow. "That's all you have to say? What do you want me to say, Minji?" He turned, and for the first time she saw exhaustion in his eyes. "That I made mistakes? That I hurt people? You knew who I was when you said yes. I didn't know you had children, because it wasn't your business." The coldness in his voice made her flinch. "I'm about to be your wife. How is it not my business? They're not part of this life." His tone was final. "They never will be. They're your sons. And I made sure they'd be safe. Away from me. Away from this." He gestured to the penthouse, the city, the empire. "I gave Hana everything she needed to disappear. Except you." He looked away. "Looked." "She called because they're sick," Minji said, her voice shaking. "Both of them, and she can't handle it alone." Something cracked in his expression. "How sick?" "I don't know, she didn't say." Jae-sung pulled out his phone, dialed a number. His voice was low, controlled. "Find Hana Kim. Send me her location. Now." He hung up. Minji stared at him. "You're going to see her?" "I'm going to handle it." "Handle it?" Minji's voice broke. "They're not a problem to solve, Jae-sung. They're your children. I know what they are." His eyes met hers, and the weight in them silenced her. "But you don't understand what it means to be my son. What it costs. Then help me understand." He was quiet for a long time. "When I was 8, he said finally, my father's enemies took my mother. They sent her back in pieces. 1 every week. For a month." Minji's breath caught. "I built this empire on blood," he continued, his voice distant. "And blood doesn't wash off. It stains everything. Everyone." He looked at her. "I didn't want that for them. So I stayed away. And now? Now I don't have a choice." The address led to a small neighborhood on the outskirts of the city. Modest homes, quiet streets, a world away from the towers and power. Jae-sung sat in the back of the black SUV, silent. Minji had insisted on coming. He hadn't argued. The car stopped in front of a pale blue house. Simple, clean. A swing set in the yard. Minji's chest tightened. Jae-sung stared at the house like it was a battlefield. Then he opened the door. Hana answered on the second knock. She was smaller than Minji expected. Delicate features, tired eyes, but there was steel beneath the exhaustion. Her gaze moved from Jae-sung to Minji. No surprise, no anger, just sadness. "You didn't have to come," Hana said quietly. "You called." Jae-sung's voice was softer than Minji had ever heard it. "I didn't think you'd answer." "I'm here now." Hana stepped aside. The house was warm, lived in, photos on the walls, toys scattered on the floor. And then Minji saw them. 2 boys sitting on the couch, wrapped in blankets. Pale, thin, but their eyes, those unmistakable eyes, tracked Jae-sung the moment he entered. They didn't speak. Neither did he. The silence was unbearable. Finally, one of the boys, the one on the left, whispered, "Are you our dad?" Jae-sung's expression shattered. He knelt in front of them, slowly, like he was approaching something sacred. "Yes." The boy looked at his brother, then back at Jae-sung. "Mom said you were a king." Jae-sung's voice was raw. "I'm not a king." "Then what are you?" He hesitated. "A man who made mistakes." The other boy, quieter, smaller, leaned forward. "Are you going to leave again?" And Jae-sung, the man who commanded empires, who had never bowed to anyone, looked at his sons and said the only truth that mattered. "No." Minji stood frozen in the doorway. She watched Jae-sung kneel before his sons, his hands hovering near them like he was afraid to touch, like they might disappear. Hana stood beside her, arms crossed, eyes distant. "They ask about him sometimes," Hana said quietly. "I tell them he's protecting them. That his love means staying away. Minji's throat tightened. Do you believe that? Hana's smile was sad. I used to. One of the boys, the bolder one, reached out and touched Jae-sung's hand, small fingers against scarred knuckles. You're real, the boy whispered. Jae-sung's jaw clenched. I'm real. Mom said you might be imaginary, like superheroes. I'm not a hero. The quieter boy tilted his head. But you're strong? Yes. Then you can fix us. The words hung in the air like a prayer. Jae-sung looked at Hana. What's wrong with them? Hana's composure finally cracked. Her voice trembled. Leukemia. Both of them. The doctors say they need bone marrow transplants. And I'm not a match. Minji's hand flew to her mouth. Jae-sung stood slowly, his face a mask.
안녕, 여러분. Before you continue, if this story touched something in you, you should know I didn't tell everything yet. The complete version has 20 full audio episodes. No interruptions, no ads. Just the story, the emotions, and the moments I couldn't fit in here. You scan the QR code on your screen, or tap the link in the pinned comment to continue listening right now.
Have they tested me? No, I didn't know how to reach you. Test me, now. Jae-sung, I said now. Hana nodded, pulling out her phone with shaking hands. Within 2 hours, a private medical team arrived at the house. Equipment, specialists, the best money could buy. Minji watched from the corner of the room as they drew Jae-sung's blood, ran tests, spoke in hushed medical terms. The boys sat on the couch, wide-eyed, watching everything. Is this because of Dad? The bolder one asked Hana. Yes, baby. He's like a superhero. Hana's eyes filled with tears. Yes, he is. The results came back within hours. Perfect match. Both boys. Both viable. The doctor, a calm woman in her 50s, explained the procedure, the risks, the recovery time. Jae-sung listened without expression. When can we do it? He asked. We'll need to schedule. I said when. The doctor hesitated. 2 days, if you're certain. I'm certain. That night, Jae-sung stayed. He sat in the boys' room, watching them sleep. Minji found him there, hours later, his back against the wall, his eyes never leaving their faces. She sat beside him. You don't have to stay, he said quietly. Neither do you. He looked at her. Yes, I do. The wedding is in 6 days. I know. Jae-sung, her voice broke. What are we doing? He was silent for a long time. I don't know. Minji stared at the sleeping boys. They looked so small, so fragile. Do you love her? She whispered. Jae-sung exhaled slowly. I loved who she was, before I destroyed her. And now I owe her everything. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. Minji felt something crack inside her chest. I mocked her, she said, her voice hollow. On the phone, I called her pathetic. She didn't tell me. Of course she didn't. Minji's laugh was bitter. Because she's better than me. Minji? No, it's true. She looked at him. She raised your sons alone. She didn't ask for anything. And I've spent the last year planning a wedding to a man I don't even know. You know me. Do I? Her eyes searched his. Because the man I thought I knew didn't have children, didn't have a past, didn't have a heart. Jae-sung flinched. But he does, Minji continued, tears streaming down her face. He has all of it, and I was too arrogant to see. He reached for her hand. She pulled away. I need time, she whispered. How much time? I don't know. She stood and walked to the door, paused. They're beautiful, Jae-sung. Your sons. I know. Don't break their hearts again. I won't. Minji left. And Jae-sung sat alone in the dark, surrounded by the ghosts of the choices he'd made. The surgery was scheduled for dawn. Jae-sung stood in the hospital corridor, dressed in surgical scrubs, his empire reduced to a sterile hallway, and the sound of his own heartbeat. Hana sat in the waiting room, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. She hadn't slept. Neither had he. Minji hadn't come. The surgeon approached, clipboard in hand. Mr. Kang, we're ready. Jae-sung nodded. The procedure will take approximately 6 hours. We'll harvest your bone marrow and begin the transplants immediately. You'll be under anesthesia, so I know the process. The surgeon paused. Your sons are strong, but I need you to understand. Even with a perfect match, there are risks. I understand. Do you have any questions? Jae-sung looked through the window into the pre-op room. His sons lay on gurneys, side by side, holding hands. Even sedated, they clung to each other. Will it hurt them? He asked quietly. We'll do everything we can to minimize discomfort. That's not what I asked. The surgeon met his eyes. Yes, it will hurt. Jae-sung's jaw tightened. Then make it hurt me more. Hana watched through the glass as they wheeled Jae-sung into surgery. The man who had walked away from her 5 years ago. The man who had built an empire on fear. The man who was now lying on a table, giving pieces of himself to save the children he'd never held. She pressed her hand against the glass. I'm sorry, she whispered, for calling. for dragging you back into this. But the words felt empty, because part of her, the part she hated, was grateful. 6 hours later, the surgeon emerged. Hana stood so fast her chair clattered backward. How are they? Her voice cracked. The transplants were successful. Both boys are stable. Hana's knees buckled. The surgeon caught her arm. And Jae-sung? She whispered. Recovering. He did well, but he'll need to rest for several days. Can I see them? The boys are in ICU. You can see them briefly. Mr. Kang is in recovery. He's asked not to be disturbed. Hana nodded, tears streaming down her face. The boys looked so small in their hospital beds. Tubes, monitors, pale skin, but alive. Hana sat between them, holding their hands. Mom? The bolder one's voice was barely a whisper. I'm here, baby. Did Dad fix us? Her throat closed. Yes, he fixed you. Is he still here? Yes. Can we see him? Hana looked at the nurse. The nurse shook her head gently. Soon, Hana lied. He needs to rest. The boy's eyes fluttered closed. Okay, tell him thank you. Hana's tears fell silently. I will. She found Jae-sung in a private recovery room, staring at the ceiling. He looked different. Smaller. Human. You should be sleeping, she said softly. Can't. She sat in the chair beside his bed. For a long time, neither of them spoke. They're okay, she finally said. The boys. They're stable. He exhaled, a sound of pure relief. They asked about you. His eyes closed. They wanted to say thank you. They don't owe me anything. Jae-sung, I should have been there. His voice was raw. From the beginning, I should have been their father. You were protecting them. No, he looked at her. I was protecting myself from feeling this. Feeling what? Everything. His hand clenched the bedsheet. I spent my whole life shutting down, building walls, becoming someone who couldn't be hurt. And then I met you. And for the first time, I felt something break open inside me. Hana's breath caught. But I didn't know how to be that person, he continued. The one who felt, who loved. So I ran. I told myself it was for your safety, for theirs. But it was cowardice. It wasn't. It was. His eyes met hers. And I've regretted it every day since. Hana looked down at her hands. When you left, I hated you. I wanted to hate you. But then I held them, our sons, and all I could see was your face, your strength, your heart, even though you tried to hide it. Hana, I named them after you, she whispered. Their middle names, Ji-sung and Jae-min, so they'd always carry a piece of you. Jae-sung's composure shattered. A tear slid down his face. I don't deserve you, he said. No, Hana agreed softly. You don't. But they do. They deserve their father. He reached for her hand. She let him take it. I'm not going anywhere, he said. Not anymore. The door opened. Minji stood in the doorway. She looked at their joined hands, at the intimacy of the moment, and something inside her finally, irrevocably, broke. I'm calling off the wedding, she said. Jae-sung sat up too quickly, wincing. Minji, no. Listen. Her voice was steady. I came here to fight for you, to remind you of what we had. But I was wrong. You weren't. I was. She smiled sadly. Because what we had was beautiful. But it wasn't this. She gestured to him and Hana. It wasn't real. Minji, please. You love her. It wasn't a question. Maybe you don't know it yet. Maybe you're too scared to admit it. But you do. Jae-sung looked at Hana, then back at Minji. He didn't deny it. Minji's eyes filled with tears. And that's okay. Because I deserve someone who looks at me the way you look at her. Like I'm the answer to a question they've been asking their whole life. She walked to the bed, leaned down, and kissed his forehead. Be happy, Jae-sung. Be the father they need. Be the man she deserves. I'm sorry. I know, she smiled. So am I. And then she was gone. 3 weeks later, the boys were home. Their color had returned. Their laughter filled the small house. They ran through the yard, chased each other, lived. Jae-sung watched from the porch, a mug of coffee in his hands. He'd moved into the guest room. Temporary, he told himself, just until the boys were fully recovered. But 3 weeks had passed, and he couldn't bring himself to leave. You're staring again, Hana said, stepping outside with her own mug. I'm memorizing. Memorizing what? This. He gestured to the yard, the boys, the ordinary, impossible beauty of it all. In case it disappears. It won't disappear, Jae-sung, unless you make it. He looked at her. My world doesn't allow this. Then change your world. It's not that simple. It never is. She sat beside him. But you're already doing it. You've been here for 3 weeks. Your empire hasn't collapsed. Not yet. Then maybe it's stronger than you think. Or maybe... She paused. Maybe it doesn't need you as much as they do. Before he could respond, the boys ran up to the porch, breathless and grinning. Dad, come play. It still startled him. That word. Dad. I don't know if I... Please. They grabbed his hands, pulling him up. He looked at Hana, she smiled. Go. He played, chased them through the yard, let them climb on his back, pretended to be a monster while they shrieked with laughter. And for the first time in his life, Jae Sung-kang felt free. That night, after the boys were asleep, Hana found him in the kitchen. He was washing dishes. Domestic. Surreal. You don't have to do that, she said. I want to. She leaned against the counter, watching him. You're different. How? Lighter. Like you're not carrying the weight of the world anymore. He dried his hands, turned to face her. I'm still carrying it. I'm just learning to share the burden. With who? With you. The air between them shifted. Hana's breath caught. Jae-sung, I know what you're going to say. That it's too soon. That we have too much history. That I hurt you. You did hurt me. I know. And I'll spend the rest of my life making up for it if you'll let me. She looked away. It's not that simple. It is. He stepped closer. I love you, Hana. I loved you 5 years ago. I loved you when I walked away. And I love you now. You loved Minji. I cared for Minji. I respected her. But I didn't love her. Not the way I love you. Hana's eyes filled with tears. How do I know you won't leave again? Because I finally understand what I'd be leaving. He cupped her face gently. You, them, the only thing that's ever made me feel human. Jae-sung. He kissed her. Soft. Desperate. Full of 5 years of regret and longing. And she kissed him back. But peace never lasts in the world of shadows. The next morning, a black car pulled up in front of the house. Jae-sung recognized it immediately. His second-in-command stepped out. Minho. Loyal. Ruthless. We have a problem, Minho said without preamble. I'm handling it. No. You're hiding. Minho's voice was sharp. The families are restless. They think you've gone soft. There's talk of a coup. Jae-sung's jaw tightened. Let them talk. They're not just talking. They're moving. And if you don't return, I'm not returning. Minho stared at him. You'd give up everything for this? Jae-sung looked back at the house. At the life he'd built in 3 weeks. Yes. They'll come for you. And when they do, they won't stop at you. They'll burn everything you love. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Then I'll burn them first. Jae-sung stood at the window of the hospital recovery room, watching the sun rise over the city. 3 weeks had passed since the surgery. 3 weeks since his world had shifted on its axis. The boys were recovering, thriving even. Their color had returned. Their laughter echoed through Hana's small house every morning. And Minji had walked away. He should feel relieved, grateful. Instead, he felt hollow. Because he'd spent so long building walls that he'd forgotten how to feel anything else. You're thinking too loud. Hana's voice came from the doorway. He turned. She stood there with 2 cups of coffee, her hair pulled back, exhaustion written in the lines around her eyes. Couldn't sleep? He asked. Neither could you, apparently. She handed him a cup. Their fingers brushed. The contact sent electricity up his arm. The boys asked about you again, she said softly. They want to know when you're coming home. Home? Yes. Home. She looked at him. Unless you're planning to leave again. I'm not leaving. You say that now. But what about when your world calls you back? What about when the empire needs its king? Jae-sung set down his coffee. I'm done being king. Hana laughed, but there was no humor in it. You don't just walk away from that life, Jae-sung. You know that better than anyone. Then I'll make a new life. With us? If you'll have me. She stared at him for a long moment. You broke my heart once. I don't know if I can survive you doing it again. I won't. You can't promise that. Yes, I can. He stepped closer. Because I finally understand what I lost. What I threw away. And I'm not making that mistake twice. Hana's eyes filled with tears. I want to believe you. Then believe me. He reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. And in that moment, something shifted between them. Something fragile. Something hopeful. Something that looked like a second chance. But the past doesn't let go easily. That afternoon, a black SUV pulled up in front of the hospital. Jae-sung recognized the vehicle immediately. His chest tightened. Minho stepped out, flanked by 2 bodyguards. His second-in-command. His oldest friend. The man who'd been running the empire in his absence. We need to talk, Minho said, his expression grim. Jae-sung met him in the parking lot, away from the hospital, away from Hana and the boys. What's wrong? Jae-sung asked. Everything. Minho pulled out a tablet, showed him a series of photos. The Choi family is moving. They think you've gone soft. They're consolidating territory, pulling our allies, preparing for a takeover. Jae-sung's jaw tightened. Let them. Let them? Minho's voice rose. Jae-sung, if we don't respond, we'll lose everything. The entire network will collapse. Then let it collapse. Minho stared at him like he'd grown a second head. You built this empire with your own hands. You bled for it, killed for it. And now you're just going to walk away? Yes. For what? For her? For 2 kids you barely know? Jae-sung grabbed Minho by the collar, slammed him against the SUV. The bodyguards moved, but Minho waved them off. "Those kids," Jae-sung said, his voice deadly quiet, "are my sons, and that woman is the only thing that's ever made me feel human. So yes, I'm walking away. For them." Minho searched his eyes. Then, slowly, his expression softened. "You really love her." Jae-sung released him, stepped back. "More than anything, then you're a fool. Maybe." Minho straightened his jacket, sighed. "The families won't accept this. You know that. They'll see it as weakness. They'll come for you. Then I'll deal with it." "How?" Jae-sung was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at Minho with the cold, calculated gaze that had made him a legend. "I'm calling a summit." The summit was held in a neutral warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Every major family had attended. The Chois, the Lees, the Parks. Men who'd built their empires on blood and fear. Men who respected only power. Jae-sung walked in alone. No bodyguards, no weapons. Just him. The room fell silent. He stood in the center, under a single overhead light, and looked at each man in turn. "I know why you're here," he began. "You think I've gone soft. You think I've abandoned the empire. You think I'm weak." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "You're right," Jae-sung continued. "I have changed. I found something more important than power, more important than territory, more important than fear." "And what's that?" Choi Dae-jung, the eldest family head, asked. His voice dripped with contempt. "Family." Laughter erupted. "Family makes you vulnerable," Choi said. "It gives your enemies leverage. A man with something to lose is a man who can be controlled." "You're right again," Jae-sung said calmly. "Family does make me vulnerable, but it also gives me clarity, purpose, and it's taught me something you've all forgotten." "And what's that?" "That empires built on fear always fall, but empires built on loyalty, those last forever." The laughter died. Jae-sung pulled out a folder, tossed it onto the table in the center of the room. In that folder is a complete breakdown of my organization. Assets, territory, operations, everything. Choi opened the folder, his eyes widening. "I'm transitioning leadership to Minho," Jae-sung continued, "but I'm restructuring the entire operation. We're moving into legitimate business. Real estate, technology, finance. The underground wars, they're over. At least for me." "You think we'll just accept this?" another boss shouted. "No," Jae-sung said. "I think you'll try to take what's mine, which is why I'm offering you a choice." He walked to the table, placed his hands flat on the surface, and looked each man in the eye. "Join me. Transition with me. Build something that lasts. Something our children can inherit without blood on their hands." "And if we refuse?" Choi asked. Jae-sung's expression turned to ice. "Then I'll remind you why I became king in the first place." The temperature in the room dropped. "I built this empire from nothing," Jae-sung said, his voice soft and deadly. "I know every secret, every weakness, every skeleton in every closet. And if you force my hand, I will burn this entire world to the ground and salt the earth so nothing ever grows again." Silence. "But I don't want to do that," Jae-sung continued, his tone softening, "because I'm tired of the bloodshed. I'm tired of the fear. I'm tired of being a monster. So I'm offering you peace, a partnership, a future." He stepped back. "The choice is yours." For a long moment, no one moved. Then Minho stepped forward. "I stand with him." One by one, the younger bosses followed. Not all of them, but enough. Choi Dae-jung remained seated, his expression unreadable. "You're making a mistake, Kang," he said quietly. "Maybe, but it's my mistake to make." Choi stood, buttoned his jacket. "Then I hope your family is worth it." "They are." Choi walked out, followed by his loyalists. The remaining bosses looked at Jae-sung. "So what now?" one of them asked. Jae-sung smiled. "Now we build something better." 2 months later, Hana's house had transformed, not in obvious ways, but in small, significant ones. A new fence, subtle security cameras, reinforced locks. Jae-sung had insisted, quietly, without making it feel like a prison. The boys were thriving. Their hair had grown back in thick and dark. Their laughter filled the yard every afternoon. They played soccer, climbed trees, lived. And Jae-sung? He was learning how to be a father. It didn't come naturally. He'd spent his whole life shutting down emotions, building walls, becoming someone who couldn't be hurt. But the boys were patient. They showed him how to play, how to laugh, how to exist in a world that wasn't built on fear. "Dad, you're doing it wrong," Ji-sung shouted, watching Jae-sung try to assemble a toy racetrack. "There's an instruction manual," Jae-sung muttered. "Yeah, but you're not reading it. I'm improvising." "You're breaking it," Jaemin giggled from the couch. "Mom says Dad's good at breaking things." "Did she now?" Jae-sung looked up, saw Hana leaning against the doorway, arms crossed, a smile playing at her lips. I said you're good at fixing things you've broken, she corrected. That's basically the same thing. Not even close. The boys laughed, and Jae-sung felt something warm bloom in his chest. This was what he'd been missing his entire life. That night, after the boys were asleep, Hana found Jae-sung on the back porch. He was staring at the stars, a beer in his hand. Can't sleep? She asked, sitting beside him. Too much on my mind. Want to talk about it? He was quiet for a long moment. Do you ever regret it? Regret what? Keeping them? Raising them alone? You could have had an easier life. Hana looked at him, really looked at him. Easier isn't always better. But I wasn't there. I left you with everything. Yes, you did. She didn't soften it. And I hated you for it. For a long time. And now? Now? She smiled sadly. Now I see a man trying. And that's more than I ever expected. Jae-sung set down his beer, turned to face her. I want more than trying, Hana. I want to be the man you deserve. The father they deserve. You're already becoming him. How do you know? Because you're here. Because you stayed. Because you chose us over everything else. He reached for her hand. She let him take it. I love you, he said. I never stopped. Hana's breath caught. Jae-sung, I know I don't deserve another chance. I know I hurt you, but I'm asking anyway. Can you forgive me? Tears slid down her cheeks. I already have. He pulled her into his arms, held her like she was the only thing keeping him tethered to the earth. Marry me, he whispered against her hair. She pulled back, searched his eyes. What? Marry me. Not because of the boys, not because of guilt, but because I can't imagine a life without you. Jae-sung, I know. And if you need time, I'll wait. But I needed you to know. You're it for me. You're the end of the story I didn't know I was writing. Hana stared at him, tears streaming down her face. Then she kissed him, deep, desperate, full of 5 years of longing and pain and hope. Yes, she whispered against his lips. Yes, I'll marry you. 6 months later, the wedding was small, just family, close friends, the people who mattered. They held it in the backyard, under a canopy of lights. Minji was there. She'd moved on, started her own consulting firm, found peace. She hugged Hana before the ceremony. You look beautiful, Minji said. Thank you for coming. Of course, Minji smiled. And for what it's worth, you were right. He does look at you like you're the answer to a question he's been asking his whole life. Hana's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry for everything. Don't be. You gave me a gift. What gift? You showed me what real love looks like, so I could recognize it when I found it. She gestured across the yard to a tall, kind-looking man talking with Jae-sung. That's Daniel. He's a professor, completely normal, completely safe. Hana laughed. He's perfect. He is. They hugged again, tighter this time. And when they pulled apart, there was nothing but peace between them. The ceremony began at sunset. The twins walked Hana down the makeshift aisle, dressed in matching suits, their grins splitting their faces. Jae-sung stood at the altar, Minho beside him as best man, and when Hana reached him, when she placed her hand in his, the world fell away. I vow, Jae-sung began, his voice steady despite the tears in his eyes, to be the man you see in me, to be the father our children deserve, to choose you, every single day, for the rest of my life. Hana smiled through her tears. I vow to never let you forget who you are beneath the armor, to stand beside you, not behind you, to build a life that's ours, together. They kissed, and the applause was drowned out by the sound of 2 boys cheering. Dad kissed Mom. That means they're officially married. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Jae-sung grinned, pulled back from Hana just enough to whisper, officially married, huh? I think they know something we don't. Probably. He kissed her again, and this time, he didn't let go. 1 year later, the house was bigger now. They'd moved to a larger property on the edge of the city. More space for the boys. A proper yard. Security that didn't feel suffocating. Jae-sung had transitioned fully out of the underground. Minho ran the restructured organization with brutal efficiency, turning it into a legitimate powerhouse. And Jae-sung, he'd become a different kind of powerful. A father, a husband, a man who'd chosen peace over war. It was late afternoon when Hana found him in the backyard, watching the boys play soccer. She wrapped her arms around him from behind, rested her head against his back. Guess what? She whispered. What? She took his hand, placed it on her stomach. His entire body froze. Hana, 12 weeks. He turned, stared at her with wide eyes. You're pregnant. Yes. A slow smile spread across his face. We're having another baby. We're having another baby. He dropped to his knees, pressed his forehead against her stomach. I don't deserve this, he whispered. Stop saying that. You've earned this. Every bit of it. He looked up at her, tears streaming down his face. I love you too. The boys noticed, came running over. Why is Dad crying? Ji-sung asked. Is he sad? Jaemin looked worried. Hana smiled. No, baby. He's happy. Why? Because you're going to be big brothers. Both boys' eyes went wide. Really? Really? They tackled Jae-sung, all of them tumbling into the grass in a pile of laughter and joy. And Hana stood there, watching her family, her heart so full it hurt. This was worth everything. 3 years later, the house was chaos. The twins were 11 now, all long limbs and boundless energy. And their little sister, Mia, was 3, stubborn, fearless, the perfect combination of both her parents. Jae-sung sat on the living room floor, building a block tower with Mia while the boys did homework at the table. Dad, how do you spell inevitable? Ji-sung called out, Inevitable. Thanks. Dad, Mia's eating the blocks, Jaemin reported. Jae-sung looked down. Sure enough, Mia had a red block halfway into her mouth. Mia, no, we don't eat blocks. She grinned, drool running down her chin. Yummy? Not yummy. Dangerous. He gently removed the block. She immediately grabbed another one. You're just like your mother, he muttered. I heard that, Hana called from the kitchen. It was a compliment. Sure it was. The boys giggled. Mia clapped her hands. Mama! Hana appeared in the doorway, apron on, a smudge of flour on her cheek. Dinner's ready. They gathered at the table. Food, laughter, stories about school and friends and silly arguments over who got the last piece of bread. Normal, beautiful, everything. After dinner, after the kids were bathed and tucked into bed, Jae-sung and Hana stood on the back porch. The stars glittered overhead. What are you thinking about? Hana asked. How lucky I am. She smiled. You say that every night. Because it's true every night. He pulled her close, kissed the top of her head. I was so lost before you, he said quietly. I thought power was everything, that fear was strength, that I had to be alone to survive. And now I know the truth, which is, he looked down at her, his eyes soft, that love is the only empire worth building. Hana's eyes filled with tears. When did you get so wise? I had a good teacher. She laughed, buried her face in his chest, and they stood there, wrapped in each other, in the life they'd fought so hard to build. In the distance, the city glittered, but it didn't call to him anymore, because everything he needed was right here. But empires, even ones built on love, have enemies. Because on the other side of the world, in a dark office in Seoul, an old man sat behind a mahogany desk. Choi Dae-jung, the family head who'd walked away from Jae-sung's summit 3 years ago. He opened a leather folder, studied the photos inside. Jae-sung with his sons, Jae-sung with Hana, Jae-sung building a life Choi had been watching, waiting. He picked up his phone, dialed a number. It's time, he said quietly. Send the letter. 3 days later, a black envelope arrived at Jae-sung's house, hand-delivered, sealed in blood-red wax. Hana found it on the doorstep, her hand shaking as she brought it inside. Jae-sung opened it slowly. Inside, a single card. Expensive paper. Elegant script. It read, Your father's debt is due. The sins of the past never die. Your sons will pay the price you refused. 30 days. Then I come for everything you love. Jae-sung's blood turned to ice. At the bottom of the card, a signature. Choi Dae-jung. And beneath it, a symbol Jae-sung hadn't seen in 15 years. The mark of the Ghost Syndicate. The organization that had murdered his mother. The enemy he thought he'd buried. Hana stood beside him, reading over his shoulder. Jae-sung, who is that? He crumpled the letter in his fist, his entire body shaking with rage. My past. What does it mean? He looked at her, and for the first time in 3 years, the darkness returned to his eyes. It means the war I tried to end? It's only beginning. What are we going to do? Jae-sung pulled out his phone, dialed Minho. Gather everyone, he said, his voice deadly calm. Tell them the king is coming back. He hung up, looked at Hana. I promised I wouldn't let anything hurt you. Hurt them. Jae-sung, I'm keeping that promise, no matter what it costs. If you want episode 02 today, comment below. As soon as we reach 10 comments, I'll release the continuation. Jae-sung's past has come back to haunt him. The threat is real. The children are in danger. And the king of the underworld will have to choose, protect his family, or destroy his enemies once and for all. Comment. Episode 2. Return of the King. War for Family.
If you made it to the end, you already understand this isn't just another story. What you watched here is only a fragment. The full experience lives in 20 complete audio episodes, carefully told, with every detail, every emotion, every turning point. There are no ads, no interruptions, and nothing was removed like it is on YouTube. You can listen anytime on your phone with total privacy, inside the members-only area. Scan the QR code on your screen now, or tap the link in the pinned comment to unlock the full story and continue listening immediately.